Our second factor, or maybe a little specifically, our next subtopic of our main point concerning military disparagement concerns, is the association of the actions of Colonel Miles Quaritch, who is the main antagonist of the film, as a reflection of today's conduct of our armed forces. Yep, it's painfully obvious that the Colonel is supposed to be a bad guy in the film, and is a former Marine, or should I say a Marine, because you know how the old adage goes in the Marine Corps, once a Marine, always a Marine. Or, in the words of Jake Sully, there is no such thing as an ex-Marine. So that is supposed to mean that just because Colonel Quaritch as a Marine is a bad guy on account of what he did in the film, means that every Marine or everyone in the armed forces should be viewed with suspicion and submerged in the bitter wine of opprobrium, by which I mean that you start insulting America's men, women in uniform in every possible manner, such as calling them baby killers, simply because the actions of the Colonel are a reflection of the actions of our current armed forces. And, as a result, the reputation of our armed forces has been compromised. Right? Well, you'd be surprised to find out. First of all, this overlooks the fact that Colonel Quaritch is a former Marine, in the context that he enlisted in the Marine Corps in the past, earning the rank of Colonel, but is not part of the Marine Corps now. He's not enlisted anymore. He's not part of it. Instead, he's head of the SecOps private military force, which, as I pointed out before, is a mercenary force under the jurisdiction of the RDA, not the armed forces. Second, those who associate the actions of Colonel Quaritch with the actions of our current armed forces overlook the concept of the chain of command, which I already discussed previously. As you can see, Colonel Quaritch is under command of the RDA, not under any of the higher-ranking officers of our armed forces. Third, this overlooks the concept that the actions of the Colonel define his character, not the military institution as a whole. For some of you viewers who may be struggling to wrap your heads around this concept, it means that Colonel Quaritch's actions define Colonel Quaritch himself. And unless the military institution condones his actions, the institution in itself is, and should be exempt of blame of the actions done by Colonel Quaritch. As I said before, Colonel Quaritch is in command of SecOps, the private military force paid for by the RDA, not a division pertaining to any of the branches of America's armed forces. But for the sake of argument, let us just assume that the Colonel has command of a division in the Marine Corps. And let us also suppose that the men under Colonel Quaritch's command have actually committed wanton acts of atrocities against a civilian population of a country that they are ordered to occupy. For example, they vandalize, burn down civilians' homes, in a Sherman-esque manner, in reference to General Sherman ordering the destruction of civilian property in the deep American South during the American Civil War. And the Colonel and his men are performing those acts when they are not ordered to do these things by their commanding officers, and when they are prohibited by military statutes from doing those things, because such actions are considered to be against the rules of war today. And I'm not talking about merely being accused of committing such acts of atrocity. There is evidence beyond reasonable doubt that Colonel Quaritch and his men have committed such wanton acts. Alright then, are we supposed to buy the argument that just because Colonel Quaritch and his Marines committed these actions means that the Marine Corps as a whole has a reputation for encouraging its personnel to do such acts? Well, for people who have a tendency to judge a book by its cover before bothering to delve deeper into the book, such people will be susceptible to an argument like that. And as a result, we can be in grave danger of misjudging the institution itself. If the Marines started committing similar atrocities like the men under Colonel Quaritch did, in my hypothetical example, and if such actions were frequent, and if the commanding officers of the Marine Corps did nothing in their power, even if it was within their power, in this case, to stop such actions, then claims of the Marine Corps having a reputation for atrocities against civilians would no doubt be justified, and in my point of view, be deserving of opprobrium. But if it was just Colonel Quaritch and his Marines doing those things, and if he and his men were prosecuted for their actions and made examples of to deter other troops from committing these actions in the future, then in my opinion, the Marine Corps should not be looked upon as a military institution condoning morally reprehensible actions. The fact that Colonel Quaritch and his men are prosecuted for their actions by the Marine Corps should send a message to people all across the world that the Marine Corps takes a great effort to strictly abide by the rules of war. Now, I will give the benefit of the doubt to people like Colonel Brian South and Mark Whittington for their criticisms, because, as I mentioned before, they arise out of the concept that the armed forces, specifically the United States Marine Corps, may be in danger of being misrepresented in the film. And as I pointed out before in my first main pointer, perception can be reality. And film viewers who watch the scene in Avatar where SecOps is uprooting the lives of the Pandora natives will be tempted to root against our armed forces. But I think that it's important to take into consideration the matter of chain of command, and the concept of actions defining characters, not institutions, into account, because in doing so you will accomplish the following two things. One, you can gain a better perspective at who is really in command of the military in Avatar. And second, you can be assured when watching the film that if you're rooting for a defeat of the military in Avatar, you'll be rooting for the defeat of the mercenary SecOps military, not the armed forces. As I pointed out before, there is a significant distinction between the SecOps military as a private military force accountable only to the RDA, and America's armed forces as a group of branches of America's military force accountable to the United States government and its citizens. This concludes our first main part of this lecture. In our next main point, we will discuss positive military approaches portrayed in James Cameron's Avatar.